I am live. I'm reading The Last Barrier. It's a book by Reshad Feilds, A Sufi Journey. This was published in 1976, and he is in Turkey, and his teacher is Hamid. Hamid has given him some tasks which he has accomplished, and they're having a conversation, and it's the second reading of chapter 5. Then he smiled at me, acknowledging my amazement. You see, it is necessary to look beyond the apparency of things. There are indeed some real cooks in the world, and if you could eat the food that they have prepared, you would receive all that is necessary for the growth of unawakened man into the man who sees with the eyes of the universe, and hears with the ears of the winds, and touches with the hands of God. There was silence for a moment. The surf was breaking on the rocks, and I could hear a dog barking in the square. In that silence there was peace and yearning. I wanted, more than ever before, to die to everything that had been within my own insulated and self-involved mind, to come into something pure, into knowledge. I wanted to be able to return to everyday life with something to say of the real world, something that would be of help to people. Hamid was watching me carefully. I could find nothing to say, but he seemed satisfied. Good, he said. Now you are coming upon a little knowledge. However, it is true that a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, for it leaves you so vulnerable that you may easily be knocked off the path. On the way to discovering your true nature, it is possible for you to be opened, or to open yourself, to an invisible world, far more powerful than the world you can see with the normal senses. You may think that the atom bomb is a powerful thing, but that is nothing to the power of the elements. These matters can be spoken of only when you are much stronger, however, and when you are in a state of true conviction. Anyway, your body is too weak just now because you doubt so much and are so obstinate. The body always loses energy and becomes weak when there is doubt. When there is true belief, all the energy that we need is available to us. You have a long way to go yet. Starting tomorrow, you are to work more on your body. Because you were a vegetarian for so long, you must be careful of your protein intake. When you are involved in the work, you need more protein than usual, for you need to be able to burn anything that comes into your magnetic field. When you're with me and we are open and working together, that is fine. But when this is not so, then you must eat well, sleep well, and make love well. He looked at me out of the corner of his eye, and I felt that he was telling me something that I could not hear. When you come to sit with me, prepare yourself and be open to what will be given to you. At other times, go out and enjoy the sunlight and fresh air. Do not dwell on these subjects beyond following certain instructions that I may give you. I will tell you another story. In London there lives a very fine teacher. She owns a restaurant, and is there most days, but few people know who she is and what she knows. Once I heard her tell a young man, who was also a student of mine, "Oh, you listen to me, friend. Traffic in London plenty bad. Too many cars on the road, people angry and not polite to each other. Cars go and crash and all sorts of hurt come. You got to learn to drive your car now that you have just a little knowledge. Me? I'm a very good driver. I drive my car. I do not bump into other people's cars, even if they bump into each other. I drive my car and watch, and so I make the right move. Remember, the traffic very bad now all over the world. You must learn to be a good driver when you are on the road." "Do you think she was just talking about automobiles?" Hamid asked. "No. She was talking about the traffic in the invisible world, which is on the increase. It is increasing because it is angry at not being recognized. And so human beings, not knowing the nature of things, find themselves moved this way and that. And before they can get back in control, there's a crash. And it is a miracle if they are not hurt. Listen to what I say and pray that you may understand. And then remember what you have understood. With that, he stood up, stretched, and to my surprise, belched loudly. I realized that the lesson was over. Now it is time for lunch, and it is also time for you to relax. We will drink some raki, and then perhaps have a nap on the beach. Have you ever drunk raki? No, I answered, I don't even know what it is. Then you have a surprise waiting for you. His eyes twinkled, and he did a little dance on the carpet, turning round and round with his arms outstretched, his hands and fingers moving and swaying like an Indian temple dancer's. Only the men dance down here, he said. Perhaps you and I will dance together, but then you are so British and you might get the wrong idea. He roared with laughter, and then, still chuckling, embraced me. Don't worry, he said. You have a lot to learn, and dancing would do you good. I shall try get hold of the gypsies from the next village. Ah, the music they play. We will have freshly broiled fish, and you will meet my friend Mustafa. He is in love, and when he is in love, he sings like an angel. Indeed, we will have a party, and as the planets turn, so we will turn. And you, my friend, will learn to be a man and to behave like a man. There is one thing that I must ask you. I hesitated before going on with the question. Please, who is the girl in the room below me? He turned around sharply and faced me. I told you, he shouted, you are not to ask questions unless the time is right, unless you are given permission. When the time is right, you will be given what you need to know. This is my last warning. You are not to ask about things that do not concern you, and what's more, you're a fool. I followed him down to the cafe in the square. He walked quickly, looking neither to the right nor left. And I did not know whether I was expected to go with him or not. I hurried along, 6 or 7 paces behind him. When we got to the cafe, the owner came running out to greet him, but Hamid brushed him aside. He sat at a table overlooking the fishing boats, and shouted for a bottle of raki to be brought. I waited just on the edge of the area where the open-air tables were set out until he ordered another glass and motioned me to sit down in front of him. He poured the colourless liquid into the bottom of each glass and filled the glasses to the brim with water. The liquor turned a milky colour, like absinthe. Without further words, he raised his glass, touched mine, and drank the contents in one draught, signifying that I was to do the same. I took a deep gulp. It was horrible. It burned my throat, sent shivers up and down the back of my neck, and made my tongue curl up. I tried to smile at it, but my jaw was locked into position as though I had just come from the dentist. Hamid had already filled my glass again. Drink it, he commanded, in one gulp this time. What sort of spiritual teaching was this? With one shuddering gulp, I drank the contents of the glass. When I was able to breathe again, I looked across the table at him. He had already poured himself a second glass, and was talking to the waiter in Turkish. Without turning around to look at me, he poured some more into my glass, filled it up with water, and went on talking. I sipped gingerly, loathing the taste of it, and yet not wanting to offend Hamid, who seemed to be vastly enjoying himself. The liquor had a strange effect on me. The visible world seemed to become flattened into 2 dimensions, until finally I realized that I must be quite drunk. What's wrong with you? He demanded abruptly. Can you not drink? And you, an Englishman? There's nothing wrong with alcohol taken in moderation, but you have drunk too much on an empty stomach. That is foolish. But you gave me the drink. And what has that got to do with it? Have you not been given the choice to take it or not as you wish? You had the choice, but you went ahead and drunk something that you were not used to, and now you're quite drunk. Isn't that very silly? You must learn to be discriminating, and if necessary, to disobey. Now go and choose the food you want from the kitchen. I have already ordered mine. I was suddenly angry. This was plain manipulation. He had put me in a position from which I could not escape, and then he accused me of being stupid. What was he playing at? In London he had said that it was not a good thing to drink more than some wine at dinner, and here he was downing great gulps of this filthy tasting liquor, and telling me that I should not do so. Yet he had told me to do it. The alcohol had made me dizzy, and had also released a lot of anger that I had not been aware of previously. In the kitchen, where I went to choose what I wanted from the great steaming pots on the fire, I found myself shouting at the waiter, who was hovering about with a notebook, explaining to him in English that I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't much care, and I wished I were back in London, where things were done quite differently. Not knowing what I was saying, he smiled at me patiently, and when I finally pointed to some of the dishes, he wrote everything down and led me back to the table. And, well, Hamid started again. What have you learned from all this? Perhaps if you have another drink, you will be able to see a little more clearly. He poured another glass and passed it over to me. I drank it down without complaint this time. I could hardly taste anything anyway, and I was on the verge of letting go completely and shouting at him. The waiter, the restaurant, everything was starting to turn around and round, and suddenly I felt it was time to dance. Let us dance, I said to Hamid, staggering to my feet. I have the urgent desire to dance. Perhaps you will teach me the Turkish way. I moved to the center of the square. Hamid did not move a muscle. He just sat there, eating his lunch. Come on, I shouted. Let's all dance. I almost fell into the waiter's arms as he came up to me. Swinging him about in an old-fashioned waltz, I spun him across the floor towards the table. I tried, with my free arm, to catch hold of Hamid. Everyone must dance together. How wonderful is it to be alive? Then, with one final burst, I stumbled into the table and collapsed at Hamid's feet, with the waiter spread-eagled beside me. The shock sobered me slightly. The waiter, laughing, brushed off his clothes, but there was an ominous silence from Hamid. He stood up, towering over me as I lay on the ground trying to get the world into focus. That, he said, was the most disgusting performance I have ever seen. Did I not tell you that you should not drink? Go home to bed at once. Somehow I made it home and collapsed on my bed. The raki created a strange state, half dream and half hallucination, in which I was overwhelmed with fear and guilt. I couldn't be sure whether I had really behaved so badly at the restaurant, or whether the whole scene was just a fantasy. Either way, the sense of loss and dejection made me question once again my purpose in being here. Unbelievably, this was only my third day in C-Day. I had lost all sense of time. A day with Hamid was not measurable in hours. Time was constantly being shattered. Shocks broke the cycle of normal living. I was never allowed to become complacent, to argue with myself, or to justify my own confusion. One confusion followed another in such quick succession that my mind, accustomed to linear thinking, soon reached a state of bewilderment. Divine guidance, I suddenly recalled Hamid telling me, is to bring a man to the point of perplexity. But still, with the bewilderment came overwhelming fear that my mind would split. Could I face what lay beyond mind and consciousness? The only hope, it seemed, was to trust so absolutely that the fear which obscured the reality of experience would melt away. Perhaps if I could be free of this, I might be able to hear and see clearly enough to understand what lay behind this extraordinary journey. But how to be free? Hamid had told me that, paradoxically, on the path of knowledge, those who doubt the most become often the best Gnostics. To trust and to doubt at the same time, to abandon oneself to the unknown, and at the same time to question each moment, so that the motive is always clear. How could this be possible? Lying on my bed in this rocky-induced half-waking state, I realized that what I was experiencing was the fear of the unknown rather than the familiar fear of rejection. Everyone who enters upon the spiritual path does so because of a rejection of some sort, otherwise there would be no search. If one feels totally accepted, what is there to look for? The fear of the unknown, on the other hand, is something that everyone must come to grips with, sooner or later. I realized that I was locked in that fear. Perhaps that was why Hamid had gotten me drunk, to loosen me up so that I could face the problem. Immediately I began to feel better, until I realized that I was making excuses again, finding yet another subtle way of refusing to surrender to something greater than myself. I decided to go for a walk on the beach to clear away the hangover, and then go and see Hamid as soon as possible. The beach was empty, and a chill wind swept in from the ocean. I ran the length of the beach and climbed to the top of the amphitheater. Looking down into the ruined arena, it was easy to imagine the days when the Greeks and Romans lived in Asia Minor, when the games that were played in this very amphitheater involved the use of human beings as bait for starving animals. How much change had there been in 2,000 years? The same questions were still unanswered. Perhaps there were no answers. A movement behind me and to my left interrupted my thoughts. I felt suddenly embarrassed, as though I were an intruder, and pretended to be examining one of the broken pillars. "Merhaba," said a voice. "Greetings." I turned to see an old man sitting just behind me on one of the seats. He was smiling and had a basket of eggs partly covered by a cloth. "Merhaba," I replied, eliciting a quick flow of Turkish. I smiled apologetically and tried to explain in half-remembered phrase-book Turkish that I couldn't understand him. He looked very serious and said, "Ah," several times. Then, looking at me searchingly, he inquired, "Musulman?" Remembering my instruction, I bowed my head slightly, put my hand on my heart, and said, "Alhamdulillah, all glory to God." With that, he moved down to sit beside me, shaking my hand fervently. Although quite taken aback, I tried not to look too embarrassed, and as he was talking continuously, I could only look at him and nod in agreement. "Allah," he announced. "Mahomeda Rusa Allah." Then, putting his hand on his heart, he stated, "Dervish, dervish." I stared at the old man, realizing that I had finally discovered, or rather been discovered by, a real dervish. "Dervish," he repeated for the third time, and continued to speak rapidly in Turkish. The only familiar sound in that flow of words was Mevlana. Each time he said it, he would pause and look at me inquiringly. I would nodded and smiled eagerly, even though the contents of his words was beyond my grasp. Then he took my hand in his and kissed it. Moving close to me on the stone seat, he took my right hand in his left and began to chant, his body swaying backwards and forward from the waist, his head moving rhythmically from side to side. "Hu Allah," he chanted. Strangely, his voice was at once thin and resonant, as though the sound came through him from a great distance. He stopped and looked at me expectantly. "Oh," he said, putting his right hand on my heart. "Allah," He raised his hand to my right shoulder. Somewhat shakily, I began to chant with him. Huala, huala. As my body responded to the rhythm, each syllable seemed to take on an existence of its own, as though the sound and I were one, a channel for the outpouring of some greater force. I felt the hue high in my throat like a fragment of the ocean captured in a seashell. Allah reverberated in my heart, deep and forceful. I heard and felt the sound, but they came forth effortlessly, as though I had tapped into a dimension that had always existed and allowed it to flow through me for an instant. The joy that I had first felt at this unexpected meeting gave way to a deep inner love and to a conviction that indeed there is something beyond the mind. There is God. There is truly a source of all life. My fear was gone, leaving in its place a complete trust in the moment and in the old man beside me. He changed the chant to the single word Allah, calling out the name of God with such fervor that he nearly pulled me off the rock seat. The air inside my body was compressed down into the solar plexus and then up into the heart, exploding from my heart into the world on the second syllable of the word. The phenomenal world, my body, the amphitheater and the beach, even my own past, had vanished, swallowed up in the name. There was no future, there was just this moment. The sweat was pouring down my body and both of us were shaking. I was carried into worlds of light and sound that erased all pain, all doubt and suffering and fear. Suddenly I felt his hand squeeze mine and realized that he had stopped chanting and it was only my own voice that I heard. I tried to open my eyes, but I could not. I heard him give a long call, gentle as the wind. He let go of my hand and rubbed the back of my neck. When I opened my eyes, he was sitting just in front of me. There was so much love pouring through him that I could barely look at him. Saying, "Who?" once again, he bent down and touched his forehead on the ground, signaling that I was to do the same. Then he took both my hands in his, kissed them, and raised them to his forehead in the same way the Sheikh had done in Istanbul. For a while we sat in silence, and then he got to his feet and bent to help me up. "No, no," I protested, but he took my arm firmly, dusted off my clothes, and led me down the steps to the beach. There he bowed deeply from the waist with a word of farewell. He turned and walked off down the beach. I turned in the opposite direction to go and find Hamid. And I stopped this here. It's the 16th of June today. Have a lovely Monday.